All right, so as I was saying, don't worry if you haven't managed to paint this yellow, just carry on as you are with white. And grab your pencil, let's start to make a few marks. We're going to keep the drawing super simple, really simple today. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw a horizon line, so the ocean line here. And it's not going to be this complicated because we've only got an hour. But for those of you who are super speedy, like Lisa, you're super speedy, you can make it more complicated. You can add lots of colours. And for those of us who are more slow and methodical and like to take our time, it's going to be a lot simpler. So we're going to simplify it a little bit. Let's draw the horizon line. So I'm using pen, make sure you're using pencil. And what we don't want to do is have it halfway up. This isn't going to be a straight line because I'm on an angle here. We don't want to have it halfway up the page because that's kind of boring in artistic terms. There's not a lot going on there. It's not visually exciting. So to make it a little bit more exciting, we do it either under halfway or above halfway, one or the other. And then we're going to place our hot air balloon. So we're going to do just the one today. For those of you who are super speedy, later on you could add another one, but we're going to draw just the one today. So let's find a space, and it could be smack bang in the middle, it could be over here, it could be over here, it could be going off the page. It's absolutely up to you where and how you do this. This is your piece. So don't feel like you have to copy me, but we are going to do it nice and big. So the first thing we're going to do is to put on a nice big hat. A nice big hat somewhere on your paper. And you can see my big hat is sort of almost taking up half my paper there. And then I'm going to start to bring the lines of this hat down a little way. And as I do that, I'm making them nice and long as well. So I'm really stretching it out towards the ocean here. Although I don't want to come too close to the ocean, I'm really stretching it down there. And I'll do the same to the other side. Don't worry about the two sides being the same. But really stretch them down. So we've kind of got a bit of an egg shape going on here, haven't we? And then we're just going to finish it by giving it, we're sort of turning it into a lemon now, by giving it a little hill, turning it into a lemon. Okay, and we're going to start to divide this up into its sections. So we're going to follow the shape of the hat. That's really important that we follow the shape of the hat, because by doing that we're creating the shape of the hot air balloon, which of course is round. It's a round balloon, so we want to capture that roundness with nice long sweeping curves from one side all the way to the other. So we're going to divide this up. Try not to divide it up so that it's really itsy bitsy. Try to make them nice and wide. So I've only added 3 lines here. Probably you don't want to add too many more than 3 really. So keep them nice and large. And then we're going to go the other way. So we're going to start at the top and we're going to curve around and come all the way to the bottom, the very bottom of this upside down lemon in this part here. And again, I probably don't want to add too many. In fact, I think, yeah, 3 again. But we've given the balloon a really nice shape now. We've captured that roundedness, which is perfect. And we won't worry about the little basket underneath here. Don't worry about that bit. because what we'll do is just paint that in later. Instead, we'll draw the sun. So the sun could be anywhere you want it to be. It could be up here, that would be quite nice. In the middle, down below, perhaps there's just a kind of half circle as the sun is sinking down into the ocean here. So use your imagination with this, and when you're ready, place a nice big circle where you want your sun to be. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect. When we put paint over the top of this, it's all going to sort of merge into one. It's all going to blend together, so we don't have to be perfect about any of this. And then you can pop your pencils away. We will get started on some painting. So whilst you're finishing off your drawing, I'll just tell you a little bit about Edward Hopper. So I was saying that he was a realist painter, but he actually thought of himself as an impressionist artist. But the critics were absolutely convinced that no, he definitely wasn't an impressionist artist like Monet or Van Gogh. He was definitely a realist painter, but he seemed to think otherwise. So I'll leave it up to you as to what you think. And as a boy, when he was young, he grew up in America. His bedroom window faced the Hudson River, and which is a very famous river in America. And he used to watch all these boats kind of go past, and he developed a love of sailing, and that's one of the reasons why he painted so many boats and sort of got into this love of transport in general, was because of that. And he even built himself a little prototype boat as well, just out of the wood that was lying around. He created that. So that's quite cool. Okay. So have a think about your sky colours. We're going to get into some painting now. I'm going to go from dark blue to purple to pink. What colours are you going to use? Are you going to go from blue to orange to yellow? Are you going to go from red to orange to yellow? What colours are you going to use? And when you've decided, just choose 3 for now. When you've decided, I would like you to grab those colours. So I'm going to get myself a nice big blob of blue. I'm using A3 paper here, so I'm going to grab a cherry size blob of blue, and I'm using ultramarine if you're coming along with me. I'm going to need white, again cherry size blob of white. I'm going to need purple, so I have a cheat purple. If you don't have a cheat purple and you would like to paint purple, then go ahead and mix some up with blue and red. Just be careful though, it's quite easy to get brown using blue and red. If your red has some orange in it, then it will turn brown, so just be careful. So I'm going to add some purple to my palette, getting all my colours ready here. And I also have my cheat trusty hot pink. I love using this colour. It's absolutely brilliant. If you don't have a hot pink, then you can mix together your red and white and create your own. And if you want it to be a peachy colour, then add a little bit of yellow as well. So it would be white, red and yellow to create a peachy colour, if that's what you would like. I'm going to add my hot pink to my palette. Again, a cherry sized blob. So just to recap, I've got blue, purple and pink and white. And these are my sky colours for now. But of course, it's totally up to you for the colours that you want to choose for your sky. The paintbrush that I'm going to be using is my flat one. So lots of you are going to know that I use this flat brush pretty much all the time. And it's fine if you're using a brush more like this one. That's okay too. The bigger the better though, because we have a large surface to paint over, and if you've got a teeny tiny brush, it's going to take you absolutely ages to paint this entire sky. So something more like this is going to be a lot quicker, and you're also going to get some really delicious brush strokes as well. But always just choose what you have at home. Don't let it stop you. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I haven't put this brush in any water, so it's nice and dry, and we want to keep it dry from the water. We want it to be painty, we don't want it to be watery. So when we come to wash our brush, we're going to dry it every single time, but we want to keep it dry to begin with. So what I'm going to do is grab some blue on my brush, and I like to sort of use my brush as a little bit of a spoon here, so you can see I've sort of really layered it on there as if it's a spoon. Okay, I might even get a little bit more. Van Gogh used to do this. He used to get like massive blobs of paint on his brush, and he would paint with them, and people used to look at his paintings and think that they were made from clay because they had these sort of hills of paint on them. So I'm going to grab some blue, and then I'm also going to grab just a little bit of white on the corner of my brush. You can see it there, just on the corner. If my camera will focus. So lots of blue and just a little bit of white. What we're going to do is start from one end and travel all the way over to the other end. Now don't worry if the paint doesn't quite go all the way along. Make sure you're starting all the way at the top as well. I've got this thing in the way here, so I can't go all the way to the top. Make sure you're starting at the top. And we want to start with dark colours. So I'm starting with this dark blue. So I'm going to load my brush up again in exactly the same way as I did before. Starting with this really dark blue so that we get in lots of deep dark colours. And I'm not going back over my brush strokes again and again and again. I'm laying them down and then leaving them. And what happens is I get these delicious brush strokes. Look at these whites and blues kind of blending together. If I go over them again and again and again, they're going to blend together and kind of disappear, which maybe I want. Maybe that's what I want. But if I don't want that, then I'm going to just lay the paint down and leave it. So if you didn't quite catch it the first time, have a peep at me. So I'm just laying it down and leaving it. And I'm going to go around my hot air balloon, just coming right over to the edge of the page here so that I don't have a gap. We're going to go around the balloon, and it doesn't need to be perfect. So for instance, let me just grab my spoon of paint again. Look at all of that, isn't that delicious? You could just eat it. So I'm going to start at the balloon and I'm going to go out to the side. Start at the balloon, go out to the side. And that's how we can go around the balloon. Start at the balloon, go out to the side. It's fine if you go inside the balloon. That's not a problem at all. You don't need to stay outside the lines. Don't worry about that. That's no problem. So I've kind of come down quite far here, and I'm going to start thinking about changing colour. So remember, the colours are totally up to you. This one is going to be a lot darker than this one over here. This is all very sort of pastel-y colours. So if you want something lighter, then you can go ahead and add more white into your mixture. If this is too dark, as long as the top is a little bit darker than the rest of it, then it's absolutely fine. And I'm not going to wash my brush. Instead, I'm going to come into my next colour. So I think I said that I was going to go from blue to purple to pink. I think that's what I decided. So my next colour, I'm going to grab some purple, but my purple is really, really dark. So my first job is to mix a much lighter purple because I don't want it to be as dark as my blue up here. So my first job is to mix a beautiful light purple. So I've just added some purple and white together here. And I might need a little bit more white. Make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, I think I might want some more white in that. I think that's a bit too dark. There we go. And you know, I'm not even mixing my paint properly. I've kind of got in here, I've got bits of white and bits of dark purple. I haven't even mixed that properly. I'm allowing all of those beautiful colours to come through, a bit like a tie-dye effect. So that then I can just sort of pick them up on my brush like this. And look at that. Look at all of that paint. I've really, really loaded it up on both sides. And I want these two colours to blend a little bit. So what I don't want to do is have a stripe underneath my blue like this. I don't want to have that. Instead, I want the two to blend a little bit. So I'm going to come up over the top of blue a little way. And what will happen is my blue and my purple will blend and they'll give me a new colour, a bluey purpley colour. And you can take that up as high as you want to. I'll do that again. So I'm really loading up my brush and I don't want to have this stripe on the edge here. So I'm going to start to come right up into blue. And that blue, I'm going to pick some of that blue up on my brush and the two are going to blend beautifully and give me brand new colour. It's a little gift that my painting is giving me. Remember, don't worry if you're going over the top of your balloon here. You can see I've gone over my edges quite a lot. It's absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about that. So we're into our second colour now. So I'm going to bring this purple down a little bit more. So what I'm going to start to do is come into my purple, pick up that purple, but then also pick up a little bit of white as well. So I've got the purple and the white on my brush. If I'm feeling adventurous, I might even pick up a little bit of blue on my brush as well. So this is where you can start to get really creative with the colours that are on your brush. You can start to add more of those beautiful colours that you've created. So I'm starting to get lighter now, and I'm getting lighter by continuing to add white on my brush. So I've got the purple and white again. And I'm just going to continue getting lighter. So I'll give everyone a little bit of time to catch up and I'll tell you a little bit more about our artist today. What was I saying before? Oh yes. So
Remember, isn't the artist Edward Hoppy?
What was that, darling?
Isn't the artist Edward Hoppy?
Edward Hopper. Edward Hopper today. So at 12 years old, he was already 6 foot tall, which is super tall. And he sort of had this growing sense of loneliness, which I'm sure that because he was so tall probably didn't help. He was sort of he felt quite lonely when he was young. And when he had the opportunity, he went straight to art school. So he had already sort of dabbled in some illustration. He loved to do these illustrations of what he could see outside of his bedroom window on the river. And so he went to the New York School of Art, and he did illustration, and then he took up a painting class. And he sort of discovered his love of painting, and he decided to go to Paris, to visit Paris. And he just absolutely fell in love with the city, and he painted outside as often as he could. Do we remember the name when we talk about painting outside? Do we remember that name? If I say I'm plein air, that's the one. Thank you. So he would often go outside and paint. He would take, all of his gear, a whole bag of paints and paper and canvases, and he would go out and paint what he could see about him. And that might have been why he considered himself an impressionist. You sort of, being in Paris, the place where Impressionism was born, perhaps that's why he considered himself an impressionist. All right, so I'm going to keep on painting. I've got my white and my purple on my brush now. I can't wait to see what colours you've decided to do. And I'm painting really nice and thick, so we're getting our Van Gogh on, painting super, super thick like this. I'll do one more with my purple, and then I'm going to change to pink. All right, let's change over to pink. So I'm still not washing my brush, still got all of that delicious paint on my brush here, and I'm just going to go straight into purple. So no washing of the brush, just straight into purple, and perhaps I'll pick up a little bit of white as well. So I've got now purple, pink and white all on one brush, all of that on the one brush. Let's see what happens. I'm going to start over here. This is super thick paint. Look at all of this. Don't worry about going over the top of your sun. That's fine. And I'm just going to allow things to be what they'll be. If you have some yellow poking through where you've got the yellow paper, that's fine. Perhaps you want to keep it there if you've got a little bit of yellow coming through. So again, I've got purple, pink and white on my brush again, and I'm going to do this again. Let's see what fun, delicious marks I can make.
Why did you want us to do it yellow?
So that we get, can you see how these bits are coming through, these yellow bits are coming through? You'll naturally have them coming through the paper where you've sort of missed little bits, or where the paint has sort of become a little bit thinner. So instead of it being white underneath, it's actually way more interesting if it's yellow. The other thing is that when we come to do the hot air balloon, if we've got a yellow base underneath, then we can just do little bits of paint here and there and allow that yellow to peep through. This is such a good question. Thank you for asking. So it's always quite useful to do a base colour for a painting first. And when I do my paintings at home, my paintings that I sell, I almost always do a base colour, and it's almost always red or peach. It's not often yellow, but it's almost always red or peach. Okay. There's my sky. So I've got that in, and it is super painty and super colourful. And if I wanted to, I could make it even more colourful by adding perhaps little bits of pink. The sky here. Doesn't need to be much. Just that little bit really does make a difference. So So you can start to kind of blend and merge all your lovely colours. You can take your paint for a little wander around your painting and see what lovely marks and colours you can make. Because we're never quite sure what the brush is going to give us. It sort of gives us a little surprise every time we use paint in this way, where we load up the brush with lots of different paint and then we put the brush down. We never know quite what we're going to get, and so it's always this amazing surprise. When you're done, you can wash your brush. Phew! You can give it a good wash. And I don't know about you, but my water is absolutely filthy now. Because we've washed our brush, we want to make sure that we're giving it a dry as well. So
I've finished mine.
Well, you finished the whole thing?
No.
Your sky. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well done, darling. Okay. The next colour I'm going to get on my painting is yellow. So let's grab a blob of that. We don't need much, so I'm just going to use a pea size. Whoops, well that is definitely more a cherry size, but for you a pea size blob will be absolutely fine. And then I'd also like you to refresh your white, so yellow and white. Again, just a pea size blob will be fine. We're going to make a lemon yellow. So I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to go for my smaller brush now, one like this one, because I'm going to paint in the sun. And I could use my big brush, that would be fine, but I think I might find it easier with a bit of a smaller brush. So I'm going to switch brushes. Let's create that lemon yellow. I'm going to grab some of that white and I'm going to put just a little bit of yellow to it. So there's my white and there's my yellow. And I'm just going to mix those together and let's see what I've got. That's fine. I might add a little bit more white. So a nice lemon yellow for a kind of faint sun. The sun is sort of getting weaker and weaker as it sinks down in the sky. I'm going to paint over the top of any sky colours that might have come through into the sun. And I want to make sure that I paint this really, really thick. I can't sort of say enough how thick this needs to be. I'm talking kind of icing a cake kind of thick, because we're going to do a little technique with it, but this technique will only work if the paint is wet, and it'll only stay wet if we really, really load it up. So I'm going to go over the top here and make it even thicker. So we're sort of thinking Van Gogh kind of clay painting sort of thick. That should do it. I've put lots and lots of layers on this now. Okay, don't worry if you haven't quite finished, just have a little peep at me. I know it's sort of come out white on the screen here, hasn't it? It looks like I've got a white sun there for some reason. Let me put on a little bit more yellow so that it doesn't look so white. That's my studio lighting not behaving itself, turning things white. It's a bit better. Okay, so you can see that's a bit more yellow now. So whilst that's really wet, just have a peep at me no matter where you are in your painting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do brush strokes back and forth like this over the top of my sun, and I'm going to drag it into the sky both ways. So have a peep at me. I'm going to grab my sun, I'm going to come out this way, and it's going right over the top of my sky. I'll do the same over here. And I'm just going to go back and forth in this way, doing lots of lines. You can do some long ones, some short. But by
Amber,
yes, darling.
It makes it look like it has it's showing the cloud.
Yeah, that's sort of what it looks. It's kind of like a misty sun. I might bring you in a little bit closer so you can see a bit more. So it's sort of got this misty sun here, and we can only achieve that if the paint is really wet. So if it didn't quite work out for you this time, just go back over your sun with even thicker paint and try again, and eventually you'll do it, you'll get there. Okay, so have a little play around with that and create your beautiful sun. And then I'm going to wash my brush and give it a dry. And we're going to paint in the ocean next, the sea. So we're going to need that ultramarine blue. And I also invite you to add some green to it. I've got some emerald green, which is my favourite green, as many of you know. Any green that you have will most likely do the trick. Any green that you have will probably be more than fine. But I'm using emerald, so I'm going to add that to my palette. And I'm going to refresh my blue as well. So grab those two colours. You don't need much, probably about 2 peas worth of green and 2 peas worth of blue. I always relate things to food. Just refresh my blue. And I'm also going to refresh my white here as well. So my palette started to get overloaded, but you can see I've got my white, my blue and my green. Just those three. And then of course I also have my purple and my pink here as well, already ready to go, so that I can add those to the ocean if I want to, so that it's a bit like a reflection of the sky. So I've got some sky colours in there as well. I'm going to switch back to my trusty flat brush, and let's just make sure it's nice and dry.
My sun's a little bit weird. I don't think it will.
Okay, did you want to show me? Let's have a look. Okay, probably just a few too many brush strokes. So what I would do is go back in with your sky colours and just see if you can divide up the yellow a little bit more, so that it's not a sort of, you know, a whole thing of yellow, but it's got divisions in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all right. Really good job. You just need to have a few less brush strokes. That's all. Okay. So I'm going to grab my square flat brush here, and we're going to have a little go with the ocean. So first of all, I'm going to make my blue a little bit lighter. So I've just put a blob of blue on my palette here, and I'm going to grab some of that white and I'm going to add it to my blue, so I create something just a little bit lighter. We don't want, you know, a super light baby blue, but just a little bit different. So there's my two blues sat next together, so you can see the difference between both of those there. That was my true blue, that really dark one, and now this is my lighter one. Something like that. And I'm also going to grab another blob of blue and put that somewhere else on my palette. So down here. And I'm going to add a little bit of green to that one. Just like that. And let's mix that in. Let's see what that gives us. That's nice. It's given us sort of like a turquoisey colour. So I've got turquoise and I've got light blue here. That's nice. So what I aim to do with this is exactly the same as what we did with the sky. We're going to sort of create these delicious brush strokes going across the ocean, and we're going to capture the movement of the ocean. So I've already got on my brush this this turquoise green blue. So I'm just going to grab some of my light blue on my brush as well. So on my brush I have turquoise and I have light blue. Got both of those. Sort of looks like candy. If you've ever been to a candy store where they make the candy in front of you on a sort of big hot plate and you see all the colours swirling together. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. It sort of reminds me of that. All right, stop talking about food, Amber. Let's go. Let's start to think about, or not think about, let's just do it. Let's create some gorgeous marks for our ocean. Remember, if you keep going over the same bit time and time again, then you'll get a nice blend if that's what you want. If you don't want a nice blend, then you need to keep your brush moving away. So I'll do that again. And it's fine to have bits of yellow peeping through. In fact, it's nice. So I'm going to purposely keep some of these bits of yellow from my paper shining through. I may even decide on my next brush stroke to grab some turquoise again, but then also perhaps a little bit of pink. I wonder what that will give me. I wonder what delicious brush stroke that might give me. Let's see. That's quite pretty. I quite like that. It's got like a nice reflection down there. That little bit of pink. That's quite sweet. Perhaps the next one I'll grab some of my light blue and I'll grab a little bit of my light purple. Let's see what this gives me. I'll start from this end now. That's interesting too. That's quite nice. Got these nice reflections. So have a little bit of a play around. You can make this as simple or as complicated as you want. Perhaps you don't want all these colours. Perhaps you want things to be a little bit more simplified, which is fine. I'm going to have a little bit of an experiment with some blue and purple again. And I might even do a little bit more blending down on my ocean here. So perhaps I want the colours to blend a little bit more. So I'm going to go over them again and again and again and see what interesting blends I get this time. I'm really loving this bit of yellow creeping through here where my paint hasn't quite stretched across the whole paper and I have these delicious bits of yellow poking through it. It's a bit like the reflection of the sun. So I'm thinking I'm going to leave those. They're quite nice. So I'm just having a little bit of a play with some purple down at the very bottom. Just add a few brush strokes of purple at the very, very bottom. And then I'm going to wash my brush. So whilst you're having a play around with your ocean and making it absolutely amazing, I'll tell you a bit more about our artist today. So he became a celebrated poster artist for the First World War, And from that, he sort of had his first taste of fame. People started to really recognise him as an artist. He was a poster artist, but he was an artist. And people started to get to know his name and his style of work. So that was really important. He always lived modestly. So in America, he lived on the 4th floor flat. And even though he had financial success, he was, a quite wealthy man. He just lived on the 4th floor flat, and he carried coal up in a bucket. He carried it up 4 flights of stairs. Even into his old age, he did that. So he had a family. I think he had about a family of 4 kids, I think, or perhaps more. Does someone want to ask something?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, darling.
I missed the Eiffel Tower one.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Get mummy to email me and I can send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, sweetheart. What else can I tell you? He was absolutely fascinated by movies. So when he wasn't painting, which he did a lot, when he wasn't painting, he was watching movies, and he would go on these week-long movie binges. So, we always sort of hear, don't we, at the moment, like, what did you do on the weekend? Oh, I just binged on such and such on the telly. Well, he was doing that back in the 20th century. So he would go to the cinema and he would do these week-long binges of movies. Okay, let's switch brushes if you can, but don't worry if you can't. And let's get that lemon yellow mixed up again. So you're going to need plenty of white. If your white is really disgusting like mine, then grab some fresh white. I've got all sorts of colours going on in my white now, so I'm not even going to risk that. I'm just going to grab some fresh white. So let's mix up a lemon yellow. I'm going to make mine darker actually so that you can see it, because you couldn't see it before, could you? It just came up white. So you can see I've switched brushes, and whilst my paint is still wet, the ocean paint, whilst that's still wet, I'm just going to do some little brush stroke marks. So I'm just kind of sweeping, very lightly sweeping across the page as lightly as I can with some brush strokes, using just the tip of my brush. And it's fine if you pick up other colours along the way, that's absolutely fine, that's all part of it. And just see if you can take that brush for a little wander. Try not to do too many. It's so tempting just to keep painting over and over and over and over and over until you've got, a gazillion brush strokes. Try not to be too tempted to do that. So try to pull yourself back. In this case, less is more. And then you can give your brush a wash. Okay, here's a fact for the parents, for the adults amongst us. One of his paintings, a house that he painted, it was sort of like this very creepy looking house. It featured in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. So that's one for the parents, or the carers amongst us. All right, let's do the hot air balloon. So I would like for you to pick colours that aren't included in your sky. For instance, I could get away with red, green, orange, and probably a lot more colours that I can't think of. Right, I've used purple, I've used red. I haven't used red, I've used pink, so I could use red. I think I'm going to keep it quite simple. So I think I'm going to use green, red, and perhaps some orange. I think I'm going to use those 3. And I'm going to start to block in these squares. Now I'm sure some of you are going to have, are going to want to include a process of not having them random, of having them sort of a repeated pattern on each one, in which case you can go for it and do what you want to do. What I am going to do is try to allow some of that lovely yellow to creep through, because it kind of looks like the reflection of the sun a little bit, sort of hitting that part of the balloon. And of course, when we have a colour repeated over all of our beautiful artwork, then we're getting that delicious colour harmony, which I love. So I'll stop talking and actually do some painting. I'm going to refresh my green. And I'm going to grab some red. So like I was saying, just make sure that you're not using the colours that are in your sunset. Try to think of some other colours to use. Grab some red here. If you've used pink, then you can still use red, because although it's made of red, it is a different colour, so you can still use red. That's fine. And I've got yellow to make up my orange here, so I'll do that. And you can choose what brush you're going to use. I'm going to use my square brush, but if you prefer your round one, then use that one instead. And whilst we're doing this, we'll have a little bit of pop quiz. So, what is the artist's name? If you know the answer, just take yourself off mute and give me a holler. What is the artist's name? Who are we talking about today?
Edward Hopper.
Great, yes, well done. Perfect. And what was Edward Hopper's style of art?
Was it like Van Gogh style kind of thing?
Well, he thought that he was an impressionist painter, didn't he? Mm-hmm. But do you remember what the critics said? Do you remember what style of art the critics said he was? They said, oh, no, you're definitely not an impressionist painter. Definitely.
Was a painter?
Oh, what, sorry?
Poster painter?
Yeah, he was in the movement of realism, so a realistic painter. He was a realist painter. Yeah, that's absolutely right, even though he desperately wanted to be an impressionist painter. And which country did he live in?
France?
So he lived in France for a little while. He went there to visit, but he wasn't French.
America.
Yes, he was American. Yes. And as a boy, what did he have a love of?
Transport.
Yes, that's right. In particular, sailboats. He loved sailboats. But he painted a lot of trains, and he painted a lot of cars as well. But his childhood dream was to build boats from scratch. That's what he wanted to do. What else can I ask you? Oh, how tall? Does anyone remember how tall he was at the age of 12? How tall was he already?
6 foot.
That's right, yeah. Whopping 6 foot already at 12. And so he became a bit of a celebrated artist. Does anyone remember what he became celebrated for? What did he do? He did something in particular that made him a little bit famous. Does anyone remember?
Art.
He did do art. Do you remember what he did? Did something very specific.
Realistic.
It wasn't realistic actually.
Transport.
Impressionist.
He loved to paint transport, but that's not what made him famous. What was that, Katie? I'll tell you. He created posters for the World War I. And that's what gave him his name, his fame, was creating those posters. So you guys were almost there. You were getting there. You were getting there by sort of going through everything else, but you would have ended up there, I'm sure. I'm just changing my colour again.
I was just about to say that. Sorry.
And my last couple, and then we'll do the basket. So I haven't really done them in any kind of... I started out with a design, didn't I? I didn't mean to start out with a design, and then I sort of went off design. Never mind. Oh, when you're done, wash your brush, and then we'll just pop in the basket, and then you can give yourself a big stretch your legs and stretch your arms. We'll do a little bit more pop quiz whilst I'm waiting for you to finish your balloons. So he lived very modestly. So even though he'd sort of got this fame and was selling his work, so he had money, he was still living modestly. What was he doing? How was he living modestly? Even into his old age, what was he doing? Wow, he was getting buckets of coal all the way down at the bottom ground floor, and he was dragging them up all the way to the 4th floor so that he could heat the space that he and his family lived in. Even into his old age he was doing that. And there was something else that he was doing. So when he wasn't painting, what did he love to go and do for about a week?
Watch movies.
He loved to watch movies, didn't he? Absolutely loved to go and watch movies. Okay, so we're going to end by doing the basket, and it would be quite nice if you used one of the colours that you've already used before, and then that way we're going to have our colour harmony, which is our repetition of certain colours all around our painting. So we have a repetition of yellow, we have a repetition of blue because there's blue in the sea and blue in the sky, and now I'm going to have a repetition of purple because I'm going to do a purple basket. So I've got my purple here, but please do just choose any colour that makes you happy. Whatever you want to use is absolutely fine. And we're just going to very roughly paint these in. So I'm going to do 2 lines coming down from the bottom of my balloon there. And then I'm going to finish by adding a little square underneath. Now we want to try to keep it small. We want the balloon to be the biggest part here. And I mean sort of really big. Just paint a little square. Just like that. And it sort of looks like it's sort of going off into the distance a little bit there. And there you have your hot air balloon with a beautiful sunset behind. When you're ready, give your brush a wash. Make sure you give it a dry and lay it down flat. We want to take care of our brushes, and to do that it means not leaving them in the water pot. Take care everyone, bye!
Bye.
Bye!